Well, hello everyone. Welcome into special edition of Sky Tower Weather Now, as all eyes on the Gulf of Mexico as we are tracking Tropical Storm Milton. The 11 o'clock advisory just dropped, but so far this morning we have been seeing some quick strengthening of the storm. Here you can see it right behind me. This is a look at enhanced satellite. And yeah, things are looking quite impressive with this storm this morning. We've seen it strengthen rather quickly from the 5 o'clock advisory to the 8 o'clock advisory. And we have a relatively healthy looking storm here. You can see some of these areas where we see some of that kind of fanning out, kind of a sign that we're seeing this storm breathing in some life and expecting a quick strengthening pattern here over the next day or so. So you can see the deep convection kind of wrapping around as the system getting a little bit more organized, and a lot of lightning up and around kind of that main area that we're watching for that center of circulation. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Here's a look at visible satellite. Now that we've had a couple of hours of sunlight, you can see that rotation there with that area as it's kind of just sitting around the Bay of Campeche, and really the western Gulf of Mexico has allowed this area to really enhance pretty quickly. What actually happened, if you've been staying with us as we've been watching this the last couple of days, on Friday, we were talking about a 40–50% chance for this to develop. Then Saturday morning, the odds just continued to climb. Then we had our tropical storm that was able to develop. So actually what happened is the area that we were watching for development was able to tap into some energy from a system that was in the Pacific, and kind of the tropical remnants of that got caught up in a broad area of rotation that was kind of parked there over Central America, something that we call the gyre, and it was able to just help enhance all of the activity for that main area, and it just intensified pretty quickly, and that trend is just expected to continue here. So let's go ahead and jump right into our 11 o'clock advisory. There you see it. Tropical Storm Milton. When I came in earlier this morning, the winds were at 50 miles per hour. Now they're up to 65. So that's the trend that we've seen so far over the last 24 hours. This storm looking impressive pretty quickly. So as we play out the track map here, this storm was moving due east in the 8 o'clock advisory. Now it's taken that wobble slightly to the south and east, and you can kind of see that there on our track map. So still very slow moving, about 6 miles per hour right now. And as we play out this track map, we are expecting that to do that kind of dip to the southeast, continue on this eastward path right across the Gulf of Mexico. So right now you can see this area here in yellow. That's where we have some tropical storm advisories. That's right along the Yucatan Peninsula. None of those in effect yet for Florida, but I expect hurricane watches, storm surge advisories to come out for us probably in the near future, definitely today. So today and tomorrow really is kind of a critical time frame as we focus in on the important details of local impacts here. And as the storm gets more organized, we have hurricane hunters flying out in it, and so we're going to continue to get more information and focus in on where we're exactly fine-tuning that potential landfall to be. Because with a storm like this, a small difference in, say, 10 miles in where this makes landfall makes a very big difference. And so the general thought with the track is pretty much the same from what we've seen over the last couple of runs. But I will note in this run, this 11 o'clock advisory model, we're seeing this kind of main center of the cone that's nudged maybe slightly more to the south. Not really a big difference though. So these are the small things we'll continue to focus in on. But right now, kind of Tampa right in the center of this cone, and it's very important to note. Look at how wide this cone is. We're talking about 300 miles of coastline that are in the threat for this landfall. And so as we're 3–4 days out, we continue to fine tune those details because it's important to remember that error of uncertainty. And so that is something that we're keeping in mind with this system. I mean, we could be talking about a landfall well south of Tampa Bay, even north of Tampa Bay. Within this cone, we're going to continue to see this kind of condense more as certainty grows on what we're expecting with this general track. But you can see by Wednesday morning, as we've been forecasting a major hurricane, and that's going to be as it's just off the coast of West Florida. So at this point, the big picture is pretty clear that this is going to be an intensifying hurricane reaching major hurricane status somewhere in the central eastern Gulf of Mexico ahead of landfall on Florida's west coast. So anywhere from, say, Everglades City up to Cedar Key, those are the areas in between that we are most concerned about at this point for potential landfall. But keep in mind, Florida only about 100 miles wide. So notice, once that emerges off the east coast of the state, it's still forecast to be a Category 1 hurricane with 85-mile-per-hour winds. So this storm is going to be an impact all across the state. We will be feeling some sort of tropical storm, if not hurricane conditions, just depending on where you're at here in the state. So we're going to jump right into our model plots here. Here's a closer look at the enhanced satellite of Milton. You can really see all of that deep convection in the last hour or so of that loop as it's trying to tighten up. But notice how small this storm is, and that's going to be a key part in the forecast as well, because these smaller storms, they're able to intensify quicker. They also lose strength quicker if it encounters something like wind shear, some strong upper level winds, or some drier air. With a smaller storm, it kind of is able to hinder that a little bit more. So here's a look at our model plots, which you can kind of see what I was mentioning from Everglades City up to Cedar Key. Those are the areas in between that we're really focused on, but you can kind of still see general consensus in the models. It's very clear where that track cone comes from. But when we're talking about where the biggest impacts will be from this storm, it is very important exactly where it makes landfall. Because, for example, if it ends up 10 miles north of Tampa Bay, that would be pretty much the worst case scenario for us, because all of that onshore wind is going to be wrapping around on the south side of that storm. So we certainly expect the worst of the storm surge and coastal impacts to be right along that eye wall down to the south. We still will be seeing impacts on the north side of that storm, but on the north side of the circulation, I am much more concerned about the heavy rain that's coming down. So we get this center of circulation right along just to the north of Tampa Bay, and you think of Tampa Bay kind of like a catcher's glove. All of that water just funnels right into the bay, and it has nowhere to go. And so that is not a good situation for us. And while we don't want to see this storm head into parts of southwest Florida, where they are also continuing to deal with a lot of cleanup efforts from not only past hurricanes from past seasons, but it hasn't even been 2 weeks since Helene scooted across our coast. And just, putting it into perspective, that storm 150 miles off our coast, we didn't see a direct landfall here along the west coast of Florida. And look at the widespread impacts that we saw from the storm surge and the flooding. So this storm is a big concern for us, really all up and down the west coast, very vulnerable coastline. So wherever this makes landfall, we're going to see a swath of coastal communities there, maybe 10, 15 miles long, kind of just on the south side of that are going to just be absolutely in the worst of the storm surge. And of course, around the center of the circulation, it's the winds that we'll also be concerned with as well. But that's another one of those details that we're continuing to iron out, because at this point, models are throwing out quite a few solutions as far as the potential strength of this storm. We know the National Hurricane Center is going kind of with the middle of that with a Category 3 hurricane. We have seen some models weaken it ahead of landfall. We certainly would welcome that. We've also seen some models throwing out some stronger solutions, which we're not going to talk about at this point, but there's a lot of options on the table for what we could see unfold with this. So today, tomorrow is kind of the key as we focus in on all of those important details. So check back with us. I know Nash is going to be in later this evening doing another one of these live streaming shows at 5 o'clock. So he'll have all of the updated information that comes in with those afternoon, evening advisories. But here's a look at our exclusive Fox model. This runs right through Wednesday morning, where we can very clearly see this storm somewhere off the west coast of the state, and a pretty impressive looking storm at that as we check out this one run. So as far as the timing, when we're talking about it here for Tampa Bay, don't latch on to anything too specific here, as again, we're still ironing out how strong the winds will be at the point of landfall, but focus in on that Tuesday night time frame. That's when I think we start to see some of the tropical impacts, but the worst of the weather for us, that's going to be through the day on Wednesday. Then by Thursday morning, that storm clears off the East Coast and we should see conditions improve on Thursday. So really it's going to be rather quick moving with our main impact day on Wednesday, but at this point we're talking about hurricane force conditions and tropical storm force conditions for other parts of the state that won't be hit with the worst of this. But there are still a couple ingredients that we're watching very closely. There have been some indications that maybe a slightly weakening would happen just ahead of landfall. As the storm gets closer to the coast of Florida, we have a trough of low pressure, a kind of cold front that's digging in across the Gulf Coast. That's going to cause some stronger wind shear up in the atmosphere. And as the storm starts to encounter that, will that limit it from strengthening even more, keep those winds at bay just ahead of landfall? That is something that we're watching, and we're going to continue to fine tune those details. But that would be a good case scenario for us, is this storm to start to encounter some of the drier air, some of the wind shear, and help it kind of stay at bay just ahead of it approaching the southwest coast, because we know all too well these rapid intensification scenarios where just in a matter of a couple of hours we see these storms explode ahead of landfall. So all of these components are going into what we're talking about with this track moving forward. I'm going to send it off to a quick break. I've got a lot more to talk to you about. We haven't gotten to the rainfall that we're going to see, as well as the potential winds. So I'm going to leave you off with a note that while we wait for our watches and advisories to come from the National Hurricane Center, it's a good time to brush up on your hurricane plans. Make sure you know your evacuation zone, know where you need to go if those evacuation orders drop. On my Facebook page, I actually attached a link to this evacuation zone map, and it's super easy to use. You can basically just type in your address and it will give you your best evacuation route and help you make your plan. So today, tomorrow, get everything in order. We always want to prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. And while we are forecasting a Category 3 landfall, it's important to remember we always prepare for a category above. So make those preparations now for a major hurricane landfall to occur on Florida's west coast.